TKM Incorporated in Moss, Tennessee is a construction company that specializes in erosion control, seeding, and soil, hydroseeding, hydromulch, minor excavation, and silt fence. They also provide traffic control and construction signs. Their business is keeping people safe, but their passion, their mission, is they wish that all men could be saved. TKM has adopted the nickname the King's Men because as they serve you, they also serve the King. If they could provide any of their services for you, please contact them at 931-243-3958. That is 931-243-3958. Or you can contact them on the net at tkminc2001 at twlakes.net. That is tkminc2001 at twlakes.net. TKM Incorporated is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure is proud to partner with the Huntsville Police Citizens Foundation. This organization exists for the sole purpose of providing resources and assistance to our local law enforcement community. You can become a partner with us and go to hpcitizensfoundation.org and make a direct donation, or you could participate in our police memorial and buy a brick in honor of someone that you know or love, or you could come out and be a part of the Pill Hill Classic Run that is going to be revived in the Huntsville area. The run will take place on March the 30th. You can sponsor a runner, sponsor a team, or just sponsor the event in some way. All the funds will go directly to the Huntsville Police Citizens Foundation in us building a bedrock of financial resources to give assistance to our local law enforcement community. hpcitizensfoundation.org and Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. He was delusional. That is to say, he believed something that was not true. And to compound the matter, not only was he delusional, but he could see things or did see things that nobody else could see. And in his tortured mind, he used the things that no one else could see as proof that his delusion was also true and accurate. And he'd shown up at my office with an object that he did not recognize. Probably he just didn't remember it. It was something that he'd bought his wife or that his wife had bought, but he said it was in his home and it had been placed in his home by a stranger. And this stranger was doing his best to steal his wife. And he said, this stranger has placed this in my house. He's given it to my wife, and she's put it there to mock me. And I'm going to prove to you that the things I've been saying are true because his initials are on the bottom of it. And he handed me the object, and I looked at it. And as a young, inexperienced therapist, I said, I don't see anything on the bottom. There's nothing there. And when I told him there was nothing there, he accused me of being in league with this man that I doubted existed, but that he firmly believed was real. And he said, you're on his side and you're trying to help him wreck my marriage. And he stormed out. And I feel like a failure. I felt like I'd let a person down who'd come to me for help. And really, this is a person I had some history with. This is a person I'd known a long time, and he'd come to my practice, really not even for an appointment. He'd showed up, and the door happened to be open, and so we were just talking. And weeks went by, and I had no contact. I didn't feel like I could follow up because I felt like that it would exacerbate the delusional state, and now I was keeping tabs on him or something, and I just didn't follow up. And I was sitting in a church building. I wasn't speaking. I wasn't going to make a presentation. I was just there to worship. This was weeks later, and out of the blue, this gentleman shows up and sits down beside me and begins to talk to me animatedly. Now, I don't remember why Jackie and I were not sitting together. Maybe she was working in the nursery with the small children. Maybe something was going on like that. But I'm in this building. I'm in a public building, and I've got a person here who's in crisis. And there's innocent people, and I don't know what this man is believing. I don't know if he thinks that this person that he's afraid of is here in addition to me being there. And so the only thing I could think of is I got to get him out of this building. I've got to get him out of the public, and I got to get him into a private place. And not only did I think I needed to get him into a private place to protect everybody else, I wanted to protect him. I wanted to protect his dignity. I wanted to protect his privacy. I said, well, why don't we go somewhere so we can talk about this by ourselves? Let's go get a coffee. Let's go get a biscuit. And so we get up and start walking out of the church building, and he's continuing to talk to me. And, I really didn't think it through. But I didn't think I could leave and abandon Jackie, and then she walks out of the wherever she was at the nursery or whatever and realized, hey, Jones is gone and my car's gone. So I just left her car there, and I got in the car with him. And we're driving to a place where we can sit privately and talk, and he's so busy talking to me that he's not watching the road. And he's so focused on looking at me and telling me about his crisis that he's veering from the road. And I hear the words of Mr. Spock in my brain: impact in 30 seconds. And I saw this object coming at us, and I yelled his name. And instead of stomping on the brake, he stomped on the gas, and we hammered a stationary object, single car accident. And we hit hard. We hit hard enough that the airbags deployed. We got front airbags, we got side airbags, we got curtain airbags. I felt like I'd lost a 9-round boxing match. I got hit so hard with the airbags. I couldn't open my door. I had to lay down in the seat and kick the door open. I took about 2 steps away from the car, and I fell down because my ribs were broken. Now, you run into an object like that in a car, and you'll draw some attention. So, the paramedics came, and some people who lived around there came out, and we kind of cleaned the scene up. And I refused to go with the paramedics. I didn't think I was hurt, but this gentleman definitely got to go with the paramedics. And so I just go home. I got a ride home, and I'm sitting there on a Sunday afternoon on the couch, and my ribs hurt. It hurts to breathe, and it hurts to move my arms, and so I start complaining to my dear, lovely, compassionate wife that I'm hurting. My ribs hurt. I think I'm bruised. I think I've got 1 or more broken ribs. And she looks at me and says, and what kind of people do you deal with? I said, what do you mean? She goes, what do you do for a living? I said, well, baby, I'm a therapist. Yes, and then what kind of people do you deal with? Well, I talk to people about their marriages. And well, sometimes I talk to people about their kids. And well, sometimes I talk to kids about some of the difficulties they're having. And well, sometimes I talk to people who are depressed. And well, sometimes I talk to people who are anxious. And well, okay, sometimes and very rarely I talk to people who are experiencing psychosis. Now, you got to understand that psychosis is a symptom. It's not a disease. And the 2 major manifestations of psychosis are delusions, believing things that aren't real, and hallucinations, seeing things, hearing things, smelling things, touching things, or tasting things that aren't real. And you can experience psychosis because of drug use or drug withdrawal. You can experience psychosis because of a traumatic brain injury. Older Americans experience psychosis because of a urinary tract infection. You can experience psychosis because of a conversion disorder. You can experience psychosis because of trauma, and you can experience psychosis as a symptom of a disease called schizophrenia. And so I looked at my wife and I said, okay, very rarely, sometimes I deal with people who are in a psychotic state. And she said, and you got in the car with him. And I guess she had a point that, yeah, I made the decision that a person was clearly in an unbalanced place. And my genius plan was, I think we'll leave, and I think I'll let him drive. Well, probably not the brightest thing I've ever done as a therapist. Probably earned me a Wile E. Coyote patch. I don't know. People who are hurting, people who are out of control, people who are in crisis. People who are delusional need help. They need ministering to, they need calming, they need soothing. And we can do that without getting in the car with them. When you talk about lifeguarding, it's always impressed me that people had the skills, and I'm not a strong swimmer, but it's always impressed me that there were people who were not only strong enough to swim, but swim with other people. But even in the rules of lifeguarding, it's throw, row, and then go. Even a person who is trained and has a certificate as a rescue swimmer, the first thing they do is they throw you something that you can float on, or they row out to you in something that does float. The last thing you do is jump into a river or a lake with a drowning person. You can rescue the people who are struggling. You can intervene with the people who are in danger, and you don't have to get in the water with them, and you don't have to get in their car. One of the principles of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is you can connect without pushing. If I have a connection with you and I put too much energy into it, you can use that energy against me. Not only do you want to connect without pushing, you don't want to let any connection with another person when you're grappling become an entanglement. Because in an entanglement, you can control me more than I can control you. And so it's not that we don't interact with people who are in crisis. It's not that we don't interact with people who are delusional. It's not that we don't interact with people who believe things that aren't true or see things that aren't there. But there's got to be a way to interact with people and not get in the car with them. How do you do that? I read a statistic. In fact, it's on a slide that we use in one of the presentations that we make for police officers. And the slide says 70% of people's attempts to communicate about emotional issues are unheard, misunderstood, and rejected. So you think about somebody that is fearful. You think about somebody that is depressed. You think about somebody that is frightened or angry, and they're trying to tell somebody about it, and then they feel like, hey, nobody's listening, nobody understands, and the feelings that I'm having are rejected. Well, if you just flip that on its head and say, hey, when I run into somebody who's in crisis, whether it's my kids or my spouse, whether it's my neighbor or a coworker, whether it's my boss, or whether it's just a friend, when somebody comes to talk to me, I want to talk to them. And really, I don't want to talk at all. I want to listen. And the only things I'm going to say are the things that reinforce the idea, hey, I hear you. Hey, I understand you. And hey, I accept you. So basically, you can interact with people. You don't have to get in a car with them. You just have to be able to demonstrate that you can see the world from their perspective. You listen more than you talk. You listen not to respond, but to understand. You listen in order to demonstrate empathy. You listen in order to demonstrate attunement. And then attunement is that idea that I'm standing not in front of you, but I'm standing beside you and looking at the world from your perspective. In the book Just Listen by Mark Goldston, it talks about active listening. Dan Siegel has a book called The Whole Brain Child, and it talks about connecting with the emotional brain of our children. There's another book, and it's how to talk so your kids will listen and how to listen so your kids will talk. And after reading those books and after going through some trainings and after participating in some of the things, I recognized that what I should have said to this gentleman when he stands in my office and he says, I've got this object that I didn't buy. I've got this object that somebody gave to my wife, and I'm going to prove to you that this is going on in my life. Look, there's initials on the bottom of this. And what I should have said was, I'm sorry, but I'm having trouble seeing those initials. I don't see the initials, but I bet if you see them, you're frightened. I'm sorry, I don't see those initials, but I bet if you see them, you're angry. I'm sorry, I don't see those initials, but I bet if you see them, you're feeling helpless. You're feeling scared. You're feeling devastated. And once you use the right word, once you use the correct emotional description, and that person says, yes, I'm devastated. Yes, I'm scared. Yes, I'm angry. Yes, I'm frightened. Yes, I'm helpless. Yes, I'm overwhelmed. Well, tell me some more about it. You see, once I start listening to you and not telling you how you should feel, not telling you how you don't feel, We're not telling you that the feelings you have are inappropriate or bad or wrong. I don't want to be emotion dismissing. I don't want to be emotion denying, and I don't want to be emotion disapproving. I just want to give you the opportunity to tell me about your emotions. And then at some point I go, well, based on what you've told me, if I saw it the way you saw it, and I'm not telling you that I believe that that's how it is. I'm not saying I think you're reasonable. I'm not even saying I think you're rational. I'm simply saying that if I saw it the way you saw it, I would feel the way you feel about it. And I'm not really saying I see it. I'm just saying that based on what you've described to me, even though I don't see it, I bet if you did see it, it makes you feel this way. And based on the information that you're working with, those feelings are probably okay. They're probably appropriate. They're probably even somewhat accurate. And when I demonstrate that I'm making an attempt to see the thing the way you see the thing and understand how you feel about what you see, you feel heard, you feel understood, and you feel accepted. I'm not dismissing your emotions. I'm not denying your emotions. I'm not disapproving your emotions. I'm just simply making a connection. Now, in Goldstone's book, Just Listen, he says you have active listening. The active listening, that idea that I'm making you feel heard, understood, and accepted, that creates empathy. Empathy creates this invisible connection called rapport, and rapport builds influence, and influence can lead to behavioral change. But most people listening to this podcast aren't therapists, and it's not your job to change anybody. It's not your job to solve problems. It's really not even your job to resolve crisis. What you're doing is you're learning how to be a friend. And the people that you encounter and the people that you care for, the people that you love, or the people who, for whatever reason, trust you to tell you, hey, these are the things happening in my life. If I just make the effort to make them feel heard, make them feel understood, and make them feel accepted, I see this the way you see it. I understand the way it looks to you, and if it looked that way to me, I'd be mad or sad or scared or devastated or overwhelmed or panicked. Once we take the time to listen, and once we take the time to demonstrate understanding, we make that connection. And that connection is the idea of empathy. And that empathy builds that rapport, and the rapport builds influence. And oftentimes when we run into people who are struggling, oftentimes there's not a solution. And really, when you become an active listener and you become a person who tries to deal in hearing, understanding, and accepting, you don't have to offer solutions. You don't have to offer advice. You don't even have to offer guidance. Oftentimes, it's just enough to feel understood. It's just enough to know, hey, somebody gets me. Now, they may not understand exactly what you're experiencing, but they understand how you feel about what you're experiencing. And when I take the time to listen, and I take the time to show empathy, and I take the time to show compassion, I don't have to get in the car with you. See, I don't have to be in the car with you, but I can see through your windshield. And if I see through your windshield, even though I'm not in the car with you, you've been heard, you've been understood, you've been accepted. And even though I'm not in the car with you, you don't feel like you're alone. Using the tool of shortwave radio, World Christian Broadcasting literally covers the world every day with the gospel. They use 2 large curtain antennas. One is located in Anchor Point, Alaska, and the other in Madagascar. They send out messages that are recorded at their international home in Franklin, Tennessee. They make available 40 hours of broadcast every day. The broadcasts are made in English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, English for Africa, and Arabic. They would love for your group to visit them. You can bring your ladies group, your youth group, or your men's group. Just give them a call at 615-371-8707, 615-371-8707, or you can go to 3Ws and a dot, worldchristian.org, find the Donate Here button, and make a financial contribution to support this work that literally covers the world every day with the gospel. World Christian Broadcasting, in cooperation with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure, is sponsored by us. What? We sponsor ourselves? Is that even legal? Check us out on Amazon. You can have access to the titles of Pedagogue, the youth ministry book by Lonnie Jones, Cognitive Spiritual Development, a Christ-centered approach to spiritual self-esteem, Grappling with Life, Controlling Your Inside Space, a small essay using the principles of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to talk about psychological and emotional self-defense, If I Were a Mouse, a children's book written and illustrated by Lonnie Jones, and then The Selfish Reel, a very short story about a decision. Also, you can check out our YouTube channel to see archived lessons and presentations from across the country, some videos with rope tricks and knots. Don't forget to visit the Facebook page 550 Guys to learn about the little rope men that we make and that we invented and that we make. And then be sure to click like, subscribe, and share. This is Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure.